Hello and welcome to my sew along for my fall Know Me pattern, ME2101. Today we're going to be filming view B, which is the skirt. This pattern was inspired by my basketball background. If you didn't know, I played both collegiately and professionally overseas in Australia and had quite a long career before I dove into the fashion industry. So basketball was always my first love. Now sewing and fashion is my second. But when I was growing up, I always wanted a snap or tearaway skirt. Back in the early 2000s, when I first started playing basketball, tearaway pants were all the rage. We see some of that athleisure coming back into style this season, like the Adidas striped pants. And so I really wanted to pull on not only my basketball background, but what was going to be sort of in style or in season this fall. And hence, we got this athletic look with the crossover top and the tearaway skirt. As far as notions go, this does require quite a bit of elastic, 3/8 of an inch elastic, about 7 meters if I look correctly. But it's because with the waistband, both the waistband of the jacket and the skirt are both elasticated. Your wristbands are both elasticated. And so we're using that much elastic in those areas. You're also going to need 16 snaps, 8 for each side. Now the fun part that I can't wait to see people hack is the different colors they use or how short they make the skirt if they hack it into a shorter skirt. I have tons of ideas, but once I get back from maternity leave, then I'll play around with those ideas. But for now, the sew along includes the version of another maxi skirt, except this time, in these videos, you'll see that the main fabric that I use is a print. It's gonna be leopard print. And then the two side panel contrasts are white and black because I wanna be able to pair it all fall and winter along with going to my husband's basketball games and being able to wear his school shirt and my school shirt and just be able to wear it with a ton of different colors now. I did not make the hoodie the same color as the main fabric. In fact, I made the hoodie on the sew along black to match the big side panel. So there's tons of different ways that you can play with colors and patterns and all kinds of contrasts with this pattern. I can't wait to see how you guys do it. I look forward to seeing your creativity. Like I said, I have a couple hacks in mind, but those won't be out until I am back from maternity leave. So I can't wait to see what you do with this pattern. Have fun. Let's get started. The suggested fabrics for ME2101 include stretch knits such as bamboo knit, double knit, ITY, ponte, sweatshirt fleece, and terry knit. For this sew along, I will be using French terry on both the skirt and the sweatshirt. View A and View B both call for 3/8 inch elastic. View A calls for 5 3/4 yards, and View B calls for 3 7/8 yards of the elastic. View B also calls for 16 5/8 inch heavy duty snaps. Down here you will find a stretch guide. So what you will do is stretch your fabric, and this is the amount of stretch that you need to complete this fabric. You will also find body measurements up here for your suggested sizes and the yardage that you will need for each view. Remember that there's two contrasts for skirt B, and then both A and B call for interfacing, so make sure you have that. Pattern piece 12 is our front and back skirt. This is our main fabric. Go ahead and cut 2 on the fold. We need 1 for the front, 1 for the back. Pattern piece 13 is our side front and side back, which is our contrast that goes in the middle and the place that we have our snaps. You're going to cut 4 total and then 4 interfacing because this piece will be interfaced. Pattern piece 15 is our casing for our waistband for the skirt. Cut 2. Pattern piece 16 is our elastic guide for our waistband. Next, we are going to take our pattern piece number 14. Right now I have 2 in front of me, but you should have 4. I've already gone ahead and I've created a stitch line at 1/4 inch because the pattern calls for you to press this over at 1/4 of an inch on the unnotched side. I like to put that stitch line there so that I know I'm getting a clean 1/4 of an inch the whole way down, because this is a very long strip with it being a maxi skirt. And so it's so much easier for me to then just, instead of using a seam gauge all the way down, I know I already have the 1/4 inch. So you can go ahead and put in that stitch line. You can see it's a little bit ripply. I need to fix my tension. But after you do that, you'll press it and then it will go under. And again, this is on the unnotched side. So your notched side should not have this stitch line, just on the unnotched side, and then we're gonna fold it over. Next, we're going to take pattern piece 13. You should have 4 of these cut out. Right now, I only have 2 in front of me. You can see here at the notch is where we're going to be connecting our pattern piece 14 to, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out and show you what that looks like. We are going to pin the wrong side, which is this side, of pattern piece 14 to the right side of pattern piece 13, and we're going to match notches and we're going to pin all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and pin and we will come back. Once you're finished pinning, it should have your pattern piece 13 folded at that notch line. So this is folded wrong side to wrong side, and then I've attached my trim piece on top. Now what we're gonna do is take it to the machine and sew along the edge here. So when you're finished with that, it should look like this. You've edge stitched along the way, the trim and the contrast all the way down. Go ahead and repeat this to the 3 other pieces. The easiest way I've found is by pinning it together, and then as you're starting your second pins, you'll know that they're gonna lay on top of each other like this, and so you want it to be the opposite, because they're going to lay like this. So the black should be in the middle and each piece of the trim should be on the outsides. So go ahead and repeat this process for the remaining 3 trim pieces, and then we'll connect them to the front skirt and front back. Next, we're going to take pattern piece 12, which is our front and back skirt. This is our main fabric, and we're going to attach the side seams to each side at the notches. So you'll see I have a notch here, and then I have a notch over here, and we're going to attach those side panels right side to right side. So again, I have my contrasting side panel. I accidentally cut 2 notches, so please ignore that one. It's this notch down here. We are going to match the notches, and then I'm going to pin. You can tell I used white thread because on my first contrast I wanted to use white thread here, so that's why you see it on the other side. I'm actually going to sew with black thread when I attach these 2 at the side seam, and you shouldn't be able to see it, but this is how it will connect to the skirt. Now that it's pinned together, we're going to go ahead and stitch at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and go ahead and repeat that to the other side of your skirt, connect the other panel, and then you're going to repeat that to the back panel as well. When you're finished attaching the side panel, this is what it will look like. So you'll have your first contrast, which is the skinnier right here, and then your thick contrast, which eventually this is where our snaps and buttons are going to go. So like I said, go ahead and repeat it to the other side of your front skirt, and then do the same thing to your back, front, and skirt. You're going to attach the side panels to all the sides of our skirts. When you're finished connecting, it will look like this. I like to go ahead and press just so it stays flat and it looks nice. So this is where I have my pins up here just to remind me that this is the top and not the bottom. So what we're going to move on to next is the bottom hem on both the front and the back. And we are going to go ahead and roll this up an inch and a 1/4, and then you're going to go ahead and stitch at the inch. So we're going to go ahead and clean finish the bottom of our front and back skirt before we move on. So before I go and sew at an inch, so I'll sew across an inch on top here all the way across to create the bottom hemline. what I did was I folded it up at 1.25 inches, and then I took the top 1/4 inch and folded that under, so that's why you see those stitch lines, because they acted as guides, and I folded it under at 1/4 inch, and then I have my fold at 1.25 inches so that I have it perfectly lined up. I'm gonna take this to the machine and I'm gonna stitch at 1 inch all the way across for my hemline on both the back and the front. Now that our bottom hem is hemmed 1 inch, and you can see it's clean finish on the inside. So now that it's hemmed, we are going to go ahead and baste our 2 skirts together to prepare for the waistband. Before I pin them together, I like to designate which skirt is going to be my front, so I've selected this one for no particular reason. It's just that when we go ahead to pin our skirt pieces together on the side to get ready for that basting stitch, I know that my front skirt is going to overlap on top of my back skirt. So my back skirt side panel should be underneath, and my front is gonna be on top, because this is where we're gonna place the snaps, and then this is where we're gonna place the bottom of the snaps to snap onto. And so what I did was connect right here at the black with the notches. So we're connecting right here, and then on the other side, same thing. So again, I've lined them up. My front overlaps on top of my back. I've lined them up and I've pinned. So that way when I do my basting stitch, they stay together. Next, we are going to take pattern piece 8. You can see here where I've marked the dots. And so what we're going to do is sew 5/8 of an inch down to this dot, leave this open, and then sew the remaining 5/8 inch down here. So make sure you back stitch at each dot so that this will remain an opening, but it won't open up once we feed our elastics through. When you're finished, it should go ahead and look like this. Again, there's an opening right here that will slide elastic through. All right, now that we've finished both sides of our waistband casing, the next step is to turn this inside out. So it's easier as well if you press this, but I already went to my machine and pressed, and this French terry just doesn't want to press. But you can see here we have that opening. So press open the side seams here. Again, my iron just doesn't want to press. And then what we're gonna do is fold it in half all the way around, wrong side to wrong side. So I like to start on the side seams so that I know that I get these flat and not twisted. So I'll pin them right there. And then same thing on this side. And then I'm just gonna work on pinning it in half all the way around. So go ahead and do that now, just so you can get the proportions right. Okay, now that it's pinned and easier to see what the waistband is gonna look like once we attach it, you can see that this is my outside because we don't have that little hole here that we created on the inside to feed the elastic. So this is your inside. So when we're gonna perform the next step, you need to make sure that you can see this and that it's not the fully shut side on this. I hope it shows through with the print, but we should be able to see the gap that we're gonna feed the elastic through. That's how you know that you're on the correct side for this next step. For this next step, we're gonna take our pattern piece again, on the side that has the opening. And we're gonna lay it on top. And you can see here, what we're about to do for this next step is create the 2 next rows of stitching to create the 3 channels for the elastic. So this will be the seam line when we attach it to the skirt. And then this will be a stitch line and this will be a stitch line. So there'll be 3 channels here for the elastics. So what I like to do is take my water soluble marker, and this is pretty tedious. I'm sure you could do it faster, but because the water soluble marker dries so fast, I save it for the last step. And what I'm gonna do, or whatever tool that you like to use, you can use a darker marker. For me, I like this because it erases in the air and water. But I'm just gonna go around and make little markings for myself the whole way around the waistband so that when I create the channels, it stays on the guide. So go ahead and mark this all the way around, and then we'll create those 2 stitch lines for the channels. As you can see, I've created little a guideline with my air soluble marker. What I'm going to do is start about 5/8 of an inch from this opening, and I'm going to end 5/8 inch of this opening so that I can feed my elastic through the channels when we create it. But what you're going to do is sew a straight line along your first set of guidelines, and then your second line along the second guidelines. So we're stitching 2 lines, and so what I like to do is, again, I'm going to start a little bit ahead of that opening. And then you're just gonna sew along those guidelines all the way around through all thicknesses of your waistband so that it creates that casing for your elastic. You're gonna go ahead and repeat this process to the second row and go ahead and stitch along those guidelines, and we're almost finished with the waistband, and then we can attach it to the skirt and add the elastic. All right, now that we've created our 2 casings, you can see here on both sides, we're gonna go ahead and attach our waistband to our skirt, and then we will do a stitch line at 5/8, and then after the 5/8, we'll do another stitch line at 1/4 below that, and then trim the excess so this doesn't get bulky at the waist. So let's go ahead and pin this to our skirt. So I've gone ahead and pinned all the way around at the waist. I remember we want this hole to be facing us so that when it connects face to face, that is not shown on the outside. Side seam goes in the center of this panel, and then be sure to match all the notches. So what we're going to do is sew 5/8 inch all the way around to complete our final casing. And then after we sew the 5/8 inch, we'll sew another 1/4 inch line next to it and then trim off the excess so that this isn't bulky at our waist, because it could tend to get a little bit bulky and we don't want to add any more bulk at our waist. This next step, you're going to need 3/8 of an inch elastic. This pattern calls for quite a few yards, so I bought 3 packs totaling 6 yards. And then you're going to need safety pins, at least 3, because we've created those channels and we're going to feed the elastics through those channels. You can do it one at a time. I like to do all 3 at the same time so that my channels aren't getting all the elastics not getting twisted in them. So these are what you're going to need for the next step. So what I like to do is put the paper clip at the end of the elastic. Remember, you're going to use your elastic guide to figure out the length of elastic that you need for your waistband. So go ahead and cut out 3 pieces. And then I've already threaded my elastic through just because it took so long off camera. But I'm also going to leave mine open because at the time of filming right now, I am currently 39 weeks and 4 days pregnant. So I don't actually really know how big my waist is going to be. So for the sake of sizing, once I'm in postpartum, I'm actually gonna leave this open so I can come back and adjust it, my waistband. But obviously once you feed all three elastic bands through, then you'll go ahead, you will stitch it together, and then you will distribute the, and again, I'm gonna leave it all along because I don't know how much room I'm gonna need, if I need more or less. But then you'll stitch it all the way around and then disperse the excess, and you'll get a nice waistband with your 3 different elastics. So I've went ahead and fed it through and just pushed it through 1 row at a time, and then went to the next row. I start at the top because it's easier for me. I've made this pattern 2 times now, so I like to start at the top channel and work my way down. Alternatively, if you are annoyed that you have to do this 3 times, because sometimes feeding elastic is annoying, and it's more susceptible to getting twisted. So you can see here, it starts twisting, and then I'm gonna go and fix that. But you can alternatively get a big piece of elastic about 1 inch wide and feed the whole big 1 inch wide elastic through, and then create the stitch lines if you would prefer to do that method instead. For me, I'm preferring the channels just because I don't know where I'm going to land postpartum size wise. So, but if I wanted to do the waistband quickly, you could do a piece of elastic that's about 1 inch to 1.25 inches wide, and then go ahead and pull this tight when you're sewing to create the channels on the actual band, and you'll get the same effect of just the waistband being all scrunchy and ready to go. So the next step is to install the snaps on the side. We're almost done. As soon as you finish threading all 3 pieces, I would go back through and create the stitch lines here to seal it up, and then go ahead with a needle and some thread and close this up. But because I'm about to enter postpartum and give birth to a baby, I'm gonna leave this open so I know my sizing. So go ahead and do that, and then we move on to the snaps. Before we install the snaps, I just wanted to show you some tools that I found are really helpful when installing snaps. And you have to forgive me because baby brain is well in effect, so I forget the names of these. But these are so important to have when installing the snaps. I like to just put this on my table just as an extra layer of added protection. But essentially what you would do is place the snaps in here, place the snap on this side, and then you would need a hammer, and then you're gonna hammer down. And so these help create the snaps to be really strong. I also like to use the awl because this helps when you're using the pattern pieces to create the holes. This helps kind of create the hole first before you insert the snap on the one side or the other. So the snaps I recommend, I got mine from Joann, so today I'll be using this bronzy color brass snap. Alternatively, I was gonna go for the shiny black, but I think I like the way the gold works better. So the snaps need to be 5/8 inch, 16 snaps total, 8 on each side. So make sure that you buy enough packs. This one comes with 7, this one comes with 6. So depending on the size of the pack, you might have to buy at least 3 packs of the snaps. And it's always good to have extra in case this is your first time installing snaps. When I first installed snaps for the very first time, I totally messed up the pointed prongs that you see here on the snaps. And so I totally squished them down. I don't know if you can get a good view of that, but each side has these pointed prongs. And so sometimes it's just nice to have extra in case you make a mistake, because you can't really go back and fix this. Before I transfer my guide onto my side panels, what I like to do is just pin through all layers to make sure that before I create my guide, that this is all gonna like lay nicely and not be like when we put the snap in and it's not lined up. So what I'm doing is I'm just gently lining it up, making sure it matches, so that way when I lay the guide down, I know that I'm going to get a hole on both side panel pieces that match up perfect, so that when I put my snaps on, they're not wonky. All right, so you can see here, I marked my guides with a white colored pencil since I'm on black fabric. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and install a snap. Okay, so I'm gonna start at my first marker. What I've done is I've just placed it under the top side panel. And so I try to place this with my dot in the center of that marking. And then we're gonna go ahead and take the snap that we went on the outside, because this is gonna show on the outside. So we're gonna take the snap that we went on the outside and the piece that connects to that. We're gonna place that in there. And then we're going to place our snap. And I want to make sure my garment is laying flat and that it's in the right place. And I'm going to take this piece and my hammer, give it a couple whacks. When I lift it up, it is now connected, which is beautiful. And then I'm going to move down. What I like to do is do all the top first, and then I go back through and I do the bottom after. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on all the top snaps first. Okay, now that I have the top half of my snap installed on the front panel, we're gonna install the second piece. So again, I'm gonna layer it. That will go under. The fabric will go on top, and then I'll place this on. And then I'll take my handy dandy tool, and you can see here, it has a little space. And I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there, and then I'll hammer it down. And again, we're gonna do this on the underside here. So when I go to snap it, boom, it goes snap shut. So you can see here, I've placed it on the bottom. And then I have marked where I want this to go. It lines up with the snap. And then I'm gonna push the fabric down a little bit to make sure I grab onto those teeth. I'm going to place my snap here. Hopefully I have enough room to hammer. And then it will snap shut. And we have our first snap in place, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do it all the way down. So you can see here, it now snaps in place perfectly. Go ahead and repeat this step on both sides all the way down for 15 or 16 snaps, and then we're finished. All right, that concludes our sew along. I cannot wait to see how you style it and take photos or reels. Please tag me at Miss Alisha Grace on Instagram or TikTok. I'd love to see what you come up with. Again, use the hashtag ME2101. And until next time.